there are different methods of coaching, and they are identified on page 4. But one of the key methods of coaching people through that gap, and the gap is spoken about on page 6. So if you just look at that diagram for a minute, and literally for a minute, and just look at the steps that are identified in that diagram. You'll see that it essentially focuses on what is called this gap of possibility. So it's guiding the coachee or the individual from where they are to where they want to be. Yep. Again, it's not about you. It's completely about them. And it's about how you use your skills to get them to where they want to be. And how do you do that? How do you get them to where they want to be? Firstly, you need to make sure that they have a focus. If they don't have a focus, an individual learning plan can help them focus. So you've already got a tool in your repertoire of skills. Today, you know that there is a tool that you can use to establish a focus, and that's an individual learning plan. Now you can start coaching. Yeah? So, you coach them. First thing you need to do, if that's your focus, help them to discover possibilities. Assist them to explore opportunities. And then make explicit for them the potential that is available to them. So, looking at their focus, you then begin to guide them in terms of what is possible. What are the opportunities they can explore? What are the opportunities that they haven't even thought of? And given that these are the opportunities, what potential does that have for them? Yeah? As I said earlier, nothing happens if you don't put some time frame commitments to it that you can be held accountable for. Otherwise, it will always be an idea. And ideas do not create opportunities. Ideas will always remain ideas if we don't put them into action. And this is the most important part of your role, is to create an action plan around those ideas. Yeah. So you have to assist them in developing an action plan. And remember, it has to be at the level of the individual. It has to be within the capability of the individual, within the time frame of the individual. Donna spoke about how, in fact, not only Donna, but also Keely spoke about how they had to put plans in place, weekly plans in place, daily plans in place, based around their existing lifestyle. So you need to figure out what is the existing lifestyle of the person that you are coaching, and therefore what is possible. Because that's also key. If they say, I'm going to do this on a Monday, I'm going to do that on a Wednesday, I'm going to do that on a Friday, I'm going to exercise for 6 days a week, but they're working shifts. How is that possible? This is your role, is to make explicit for them what is achievable and in guiding them towards achieving that. Very important, remove barriers, identify what those obstacles are, get them to identify it, and then get them to figure out ways of how it is that they can overcome these obstacles, how they can address them. Is it something that they can address? Is it something that someone else needs to address for them? And if it's something that someone else needs to do, what must they do to get that someone else to do it? That's your role. Yeah? To help them come up with solutions, to guide them through that. And then, so that's the coaching section. Discover, develop, remove. Discover, develop, remove. And you're constantly reviewing, recapping, summarizing how they are moving on that plan of action. Yeah? Now, how do you get them to do that? How do you get them to do that? So that all you are doing is guiding.
Motivate them in some manner that they'd be interested in.
So how do you do that? Sorry? Yeah. Positive encouragement. Yes.
Focusing on outcomes.
Focusing on outcomes.
You'd have to develop a relationship with them
Yeah.
so that was genuine,
Okay.
I would imagine.
So, what would be your first step? You're going to, if you, are any of you in a situation currently where you have to coach others? Okay, explain your situation.
I'm going to do it next week, so I'm very attentive.
Yeah.
The school has their goal, but the pupil, who's a adult, semi-adult, has different goals, and we have to bring the two together. So as I'm listening to you talk, I'm thinking we have to get buy-in from him to. First, we have to find out what he wants, and because we can't even go forward. So we're going to have to coach him to say what he actually wants out of school, I guess. And then by making making some sort of potentials for him how to reach the goal he wants out of school. And would get a lot more buy-in than what's happening now, which is the school saying they're not doing these certain things and they're going to kick them out if they don't. And this person has no interest in doing, sees no connection to what the school's imposing on them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, you're in a very difficult situation.
Yeah, so I'm going to think about like using this to see if we can get buy-in. I know it sort of seems like, but he might come up with some very good ideas on how to, they all come out with the same, with the compromise, you know, everyone wants them to stay in school. Everyone wants them to learn to read and write.
Let's just unpack that, everyone.
Yeah.
Because you see, I've written the context.
Yeah.
You need to know who are the stakeholders in this context. So who is that everyone? It's the student.
We
Yeah.
hope. He might not want to.
But he's
Yeah.
a stakeholder.
Yes,
Yeah?
he is a stakeholder.
The
yeah.
parents, are they stakeholders? Are they
Yes.
involved in this?
Yes.
Who in the school is involved? The principal,
Special needs teacher
special needs teacher,
and the nurse.
and the nurse. Okay, so those are your stakeholders, yeah? So the outcome that needs to be achieved is what?
He has, well,
Has the
I don't
outcome
know.
been determined?
yeah, the school is saying he has to behave in a certain way to stay in the school.
Okay, so the outcome is appropriate behavior.
Yeah.
Okay. The reason why I'm saying this is difficult is because it's not impossible, it's just difficult. It's because this outcome is not necessarily established by this stakeholder. So, what would be key is for you to establish each stakeholder's perception of that outcome. So what do they believe is appropriate behavior?
Yeah.
Each of them, but establish that independently. Yeah?
Yeah.
So that you can find that point of connection. And if you can find that one point of connection, that's your focus. And in fact, You don't get the student to decide that, you get the student to articulate it. That may sound manipulative, but you know there's no way out. The only way that this child is going to stay is if he is able to demonstrate that one behavioral aspect that has come out of, that is common to all participants. Before you meet with a child though, before you start working or coaching the child, once you've established that one behavioral point or aspect, get buy-in from these stakeholders that if this, you know that he or she has already mentioned it. So you know it's something that he's prepared to do or she's prepared to do. They don't necessarily know that. So you go back to them and you say, look, you've mentioned all of these. If he can or she can demonstrate this, can that be a beginning point from which we can work? So then they establish their buy-in. That's how you're getting buy-in. You take it one step at a time. So you get buy-in on that one little thing. And now that becomes your point of coaching. Yeah?
Yeah. His buy-in, I think, is, if I got it right, will be, I've asked him, apart from the teachers, what he wants. He said he wants to learn to read and write before he leaves school.
Which stakeholder is going to say
well,
no to that?
And that's what I'm going to hope the school is saying. Instead of complaining about these things, well, not won't say like that, but
Yeah.
we
Let's
all want him
focus
to
on
read
that.
and write
Yeah.
when he leaves school
Yeah.
in a year. So, you know, at least read
Yeah.
forms and
Yeah.
things. Yeah. So I'm hoping to bring them in, and
Yeah.
everyone's going for that goal. Would that be?
Excellent,
Okay.
because what you've established is a common point of interest, and that's going to be your focus. And then you coach him through that. Excellent.
Asking him how he thinks he might
Yeah.
come about to do
Yeah.
that. Okay,
Yeah.
good.
And what you need to make sure you achieve is that he reads and writes at that level that's been agreed to.
Yeah, and then,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because learn to read and write, you're probably looking at level 1 literacy.
Yeah, just,
Yeah.
you know, yes,
Yeah.
that's true. We have to,
And then you need to see where he's at,
yeah,
where he needs to be,
yeah,
what support he's going to need to get him there, and you need to coach him through that.
cool.
Excellent.
All right.
Yeah, that's your coaching plan. Yeah. What's your situation that you're coaching?
Oh. But yeah, it's kind of there's a lot of functions in our roles, but we part of it is training new Plankaneses who are coming on board. So these aspects of coaching and mentoring and what we call preceptoring. It's a lot of we're involved in training preceptors to coach them as well. So that's another level as well. So but you're just thinking coming alongside the new nurses that are coming in, and we do development plans and things with them. So, but yeah, it's given me a whole different perspective on developing those plans as well. So, yeah. So,
And there's no reason why you can't determine the focus of a development plan. So in a job situation, there are certain roles that are key. Like my management approach, and then you can either agree or disagree, is that all people in an organization have value. It actually doesn't matter what position in the organization they occupy. It's recognizing what the value of each role is in that organization. So within each role, there are outcomes that have to be delivered to. So you could decide, you could take one of those outcomes as a focus, and then that and then the development plan could be around how do I as an individual meet that outcome in this particular organization. Yeah, it's still, I mean, they are in the organization, it's their role, so it's still very personal to them, but how they do it is absolutely individual to them. Yeah, so that's another way in which the focus is not really determined by the individual, but there is buy-in,
Right.
in that the individual is part of that organization and has at another level agreed to those focus areas because it's part of their role description
Yeah.
and they've accepted that role.
And it comes out of an assessment process. So
Yeah.
and it's,
Yeah.
but it is getting alongside and helping them to identify those gaps.
That's right.
And
And-
trying to, as you say, have buy-in there that that's something
Yes.
they want to work on.
Yes, and getting them to determine what those gaps are and therefore how they want to
It's
achieve it and then
coaching them.
guiding them.
What's achievable.
Yeah. Okay, now both your example and Donna's example, in all of that, there's a technique that is critical, and that is the questions that you ask of people. So, how do you get that buy-in? At some point, you need to be asking them, how would you want to focus on this area? Or you having had to ask that student, what do you want to focus on? What do you want to achieve by the end of this year? So the language that you use and how you phrase those questions are very important. And in your study guide, we've given you examples of the types of questions that can be asked in each of these stages. So if you go to page page 6. So when you are trying to establish focus, now remember, this is where you're going to find out whether they in fact have a focus or not. Ask the individual to review what has been learned. That may not be an approach. What would you like to focus on today? Or where would you like to go with this? What do you need most for yourself? What does this do for you? What needs to happen for you at this session? Hopefully you won't be asking those questions because you will know what the purpose of the session is. And if you don't know what the purpose of the session is, you need to determine the purpose of the session. Unless you're meeting the person for the first time. But even then, there's a reason why you're meeting them. Yeah? So the key thing is you need to plan your questions for that session. You need to know what you're going to ask, why you're asking it, how you're going to ask it. You know, these Socratic questions, what, when, why, how, they're actually really important.